Hello, everyone, and welcome to TFoM2020 Online. Today, we have the pleasure to have with us Richard Devine. So, how are you doing, Richard?
I'm doing well, as good as it can be.
Yeah, thank you so much for being with us. For the one who doesn't know who Richard Devine is like probably one of the most famous sound designer, contemporary sound designers. His works range from applications, sound pack for VST, um, TV advertisement. What else, Richard? Help me out.
Virtual reality, let's see here, sound design for electric cars, everything to apps, to synthesizers, to digital analog synthesizers, to tablets, any sort of electronic device. I've done work for a lot of Silicon Valley companies, like designing sounds for cameras in cars, like security cameras. It goes all over the place. Did some sounds for a winery this year too. That's up in Northern California, where one of the owners of the winery was like really into my music and wanted me to design some sonic scapes to their fine wines. That was a first for me. I've gotten all kinds of crazy requests as a contractor, so that was pretty wild and really fun to work on that. And then, I guess one of the most recent projects I finished up was really fun was Cyberpunk 2077 for CD Projekt Red. So I did a lot of work on that video game with their team.
I'm very curious to hear about what you did on that game, actually.
Yeah, I did a ton of really crazy like tracks. There were some like skeletal tracks, like hundreds of patches I did, and I don't know how many loops and sounds I did for that game, but it came out really, really awesome. Like, I'm super excited for it to launch. But that was super fun. It was another recent project that we finished up. And then I think right after that, I did the Novation stuff. We worked on a couple of things. One thing that's going to come out pretty soon, and then I finished up the Aphex Station patches for Richard James and Novation on the on his new synth, which was really cool, doing all the overlay patches where you can like trigger a whole complete patch from one key. So it's like a snapshot of all the sequencer effect settings and everything that's running. You can store to like a specific note that you can trigger on a keyboard. So you can have up to like 30 different snapshots you can sequence. And what's cool, it's like you could clocks, either run it internally, clock sync it, or externally clock sync it, and then each one of the patches or overlay patches can play in perfect time. And if you run the arpeggiator on top of that, you can like arpeggiate sequences randomly and have all these crazy things like going on. It's super fun.
Yeah, I guess so.
It's nonstop here as far as like new projects and stuff I'm always like getting myself into. But just like you said, I do all kinds of stuff, whether it relates to like synthesis, sound design, just sound design in general. And
talking about your latest project, you came out with a new release, music releases, Side Sticks, correct?
That's right. Yes.
Okay.
That's right. That's a probably important thing to talk about.
And how you came out with the idea of making like an acid record during this period?
That's a good question. The record came about because it came because it happened because of COVID. COVID pretty much shut everything down here in the United States around, I want to say early March is when everything started to shut down here in Atlanta. Just before that point, I had prepared this new live set. This was around December of last year when I started putting it all together, maybe beginning of January. And these tracks were never meant to ever be released. These were just going to be new material that I was just playing around with. I wanted to try something different. I was like, you know what, this year, 2020, I've had this strange inclination to go back and try acid music. I hadn't made acid music in over 25 years. So it was like, what would it sound like if I were to make an acid record today, but using slightly different gear and a different mindset? Now I'm 45 years old. as opposed to when I first started. I think I was like 17 or 18 years old when I started first making my first acid tracks, and I wanted to just see what would happen. It was an experiment just for myself. And I was like, what if I built a live set? And usually when I test new things out, I test them out live before I commit to them to studio recordings. I'll, sketch up patches, or I'll play things out and just see like crowd response. People, it's a great way to get user feedback from your fans or from people that are hearing it for the first time. So that was what my original plans were. Unfortunately, I only got to play 2 sets of that show. I played one show in LA at the Black Noise Party, which went really well. And then I did another set here in Atlanta where I opened up for Dan Deacon at the Variety Playhouse. And that was like sold out, 2,000 people plus show. And that set, yeah, it was really crazy. I played that acid set. Of course, none of these people knew any of the songs. No one had ever heard any of this music before. So it's the first time they were hearing this stuff live, and the response was so crazy. I had like a full-on mosh pit happening. People were going nuts. I was just like, and they were screaming, and like I was like, wow, these 2 shows, the response was so positive for these acid tracks, and I really didn't know. Like I said, it was
time to release a nascent.
Yeah, I was like, well, a couple months went by, the whole COVID thing hit, country shut down. My friend Surchai, who you guys know, Surchai messaged me. He's like, you know what are you going to do with those acid tracks? Are you going to do anything with them? I was like, well, I mean, we're shut down for the year. There's no, my booking agent said all shows are off. It probably as far as like middle of 2021. Like I haven't had any rebookings or anything until late next year or so I was like, yeah, I guess no one's going to hear these, until I start playing shows again, and who knows when that'll be. So Sergio suggested, why don't we release it just as an experiment? Why don't we release it as a live acid record? So I was like, that's an interesting proposition. I'll try it. So what I did is I set the whole setup again in here in my studio, and then what I did is I just multi-tracked live the whole 50-minute live show, whatever. It was originally an hour, but I tried to cut some of the stuff down to be 46 minutes because I was like, well, if we put it onto vinyl, we roughly want to keep both A and B sides, like each side should be no longer than 20 minutes. So ideally, if we want to keep the volume at a reasonable loud level and all, keep all the detail, like it's optimal at a 12-inch at 33 RPMs to keep everything 20 minutes. So I tried to cut everything down as much as I could from that 1 hour set down to about a good solid 46 minutes. And that's what the Cystic EP became. And Cystic, a lot of people are asking me, what does that mean? Cystic is a term that's applied to core processors, which it's a clock interrupting timer. A Cystic timer is a clock that gets interrupted over time. And that was basically the idea, was interrupting clocks, like clock times. So I was creating this acid music, but when you hear the tracks, they change, like they start, it's this constant groove that's, throughout the track, but things get broken as it's traveling because it gets interrupted, and if things get fractalized and pieced apart, and it shifts and morphs into different things. And that was the main idea, the main focus about how I went about creating the record and creating a live set. So I recorded the live set in one take. I did it 4 or 5 takes, I guess, before I got the one that I wanted, and then I figured out where we were going to edit and cut the tracks for vinyl. So I did fade outs and stuff, but originally it was all recorded in one take. So it has it has almost like more of a raw type sound compared to Sort Lave, which was more polished and a very different record. I mean, it still sounds good, but there's less instruments I've used for this record, and it's much more of a dance record. Like I wanted it to be more focused for like if you were playing it out at a club or something like that. It's much more dance floor friendly than like Sort Lave, which is more of like a heady trip IDM-ish broken beat record. There's a little bit of that too happening on this record. There's a lot of weird spaces that a lot of these tracks go into. Like they start out at one point, they get into some other weird, and then they ended up at some completely different place. But everything's kind of like seamlessly mixed together because and the tracks are longer. Like the first track is almost 20 minutes long. It's like 18 or 19 minutes long. And you know, Sinker, the track that I had released, the first track was eight or 9 minutes. They're pretty long, yeah. And then today, actually, at 1:30, we're gonna just release another track called 5 Shim, which is a shorter track. But I'm gonna drop that at 1:30 on my Bandcamp so people could hear another track. We just wanted to release another one today, so it's another surprise, but it's a shorter one. But yeah, that's basically it. It was a small 7U IntelliGel case that I used with one skiff, 2 TB303s, modified 303s, 2 H9 effects processors, an SBX1 sync box by Roland, and what else did I? Oh, and a Roland TR-8S drum machine was like the ground programming work for all the kick drums and snare rolls and stuff like that. So all the glitchier, kind of broken process, strange stuff was happening in my Eurorack modular, whereas like a lot of the ground beat work stuff was done on the TR-8S. So yeah, it was much more, like I said, I wanted to switch the format up to do something completely different for this record. And like I said, it was more meant to be played live, so I kept it just to that. I didn't use any other gear. Just kept it to those small, very small setup that I would like be able to pack up in a backpack and jump on an airplane and fly somewhere.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what it came out. That's what it turned out to be. And now we've turned it into a record, and now we've got merchandise and stuff, and on our Bandcamp page, and we've opened up a little store, and we're doing, and like I said, even this record in itself is like an experiment. I'm not actually like releasing it with a proper label. I'm doing it through Search Eyes and my friend Mo's labels, Black Noise, and we're just kind of doing it as an experiment because now we have control over how I'm not having to go through a label and have to deal with how they, the bureaucracies of how certain things are done. Now we have complete control of however we want to do things. We can release stuff whenever we want to release. We can like figure out how we want the presentation, which designers we want to work with, how much money we want to spend on packaging, and all the other things that would always be, there would be many disagreements on many things in the past when I've worked with labels, which is understandable. Labels are trying to save money, and so with this this situation, we could do whatever we want. We have the freedom to do that. So it's been great so far to see the analytics and study how much now that we have control of everything. I could see where everybody's buying things from each part of the world and where all the fans are at and what things they're interested in. I think now the importance of the label is not as a big deal as it used to be, because the artist has direct connection to their fan base, whether you're using Bandcamp or TuneCore, any of these services now
where you can
so many platforms.
Music,
and with social media, you have you have so much, you have direct connection to your fans. You can let them know when something's up or released that day. You don't have to wait for a label to do any of those things anymore. It's completely different now. So this is it's definitely an experiment to see, because I have another full album ready to go of new modular stuff. 2 hours of new music.
Wow.
It could be 2 records. I'm trying to make it 1. And it's some crazy music. This one's even crazy. This one goes down even crazier than where Sort Lave left off, because now I've been experimenting with live coding, using tidal cycles. And so I've been using tidal cycles with the ES9, which the Expert Sleepers ES9, and been using tidal cycles to sequence the modular. So there's some computer sequencing stuff happening with modular stuff, but I'm using Super Collider, there's Super Dirt library that the extension set that they've used, and I'm using a lot of using Super Collider as the IO, their IO and MIDI data is being sent from that into the ES9 and then to the module. I have 16 outputs that I can configure, whether that's audio rate, CV to gate stuff. And so I've been really getting into this just crazy, really crazy new stuff lately that I've been recording, that I'm excited to release some of this new stuff I've been experimenting with.
There's any ATA about this new material, Richard?
Probably going to come out next year.
Next year, okay.
Next year, yeah, for sure. I can't wait. I think it's some of the craziest stuff that I've come up with by far is some of this newer stuff I've been working on. So
I'm very
next year, I can't wait. Yeah, I've been playing around with different sequencers too. I've been switching up stuff, and I've been using Jim Coker's 512 sequencer vector a lot. That one's been really blowing my mind lately as far as coming up with just crazy, like regenerative, crazy organic patterns. And there's just so many cool probability based modes in that sequencer, and I have the expander to it too, so I've been doing a lot of really cool stuff with that in tandem with title cycles and just crazy rhythmic madness that's been happening. And it's been a lot of fun. So I can't wait to release these tracks. Some of them are pretty long though. I have one track that's like 23 minutes long. The other ones are like 10 minutes long. They're really long, but there's a lot of crazy stuff that's happening.
You're taking your time to evolve the music, I guess. Yeah,
totally. Some of them are really crazy, really crazy tracks that I've already finished recording. So but I'm trying to keep them down. For some reason they're coming out really long, 13 minutes, 10 minutes long, but they're so densely packed with craziness that it doesn't feel like they're that long when you're listening to them, because there's so many changes. It's like 5 or 6 songs in one song is what it sounds like in a way, because there's so many mutated parts that move along into different areas, and it's not like one, it doesn't stay the same. You know what I mean, throughout the whole track. So that's really I can't wait to see how people respond to that and what they think, because it's just, I feel like it would be the next chapter from Sort Lave, and more like it's a higher level of complexity now that's happening. There's a lot of new things I've been learning by combining computer-based sequencing with your rack-based sequencers, and then having them play off of each other, and all these interesting different combinations has been a very interesting experiment for me. I knew they would merge at some point. Like I was going to come back to the computer and see how the computer could break or sequence more complex things. And so this is going to be the result of that, a accumulation of that. And so we'll see where it goes.
I guess me like many others are very curious to see how it's going to sound, this new work. And
yes.
Talking again about your music, how you will describe your music, and most of all, where do you find inspiration for your music?
Oh man, that's a good question. I find the inspiration everywhere, like art, visual art, nature. Like I go out hiking all the time with my family. On the weekends, we go to beautiful, like the mountains and waterfalls, and I feel that's a good reset for my brain creatively, not to always be stuck that I am here every night. So sometimes nature's a good way to mentally cleanse my brain and remove all the clutter out, and then I can kind of reset everything and creatively kind of jump back into things with like a fresh mindset. So that's it's really inspirational for me. It's doing those things, and I listen to a lot of music all the time. I'm constantly I'm like a music nerd, I'm more obsessed about, people probably think that I'm more obsessed about the gear, but I'm actually more obsessed about music and collecting music and listening to music. Like if you came to my house you would see immediately in our living room, you know, we have over like 6,000 records, multiple turntables, and you know, huge music collection. Yeah, we've always been, me and my wife are both big music nerds. That's why we met, because she was a huge music nerd as well. And so we're always constantly listening to new music, and I'm always hunting and collecting and listening and studying music all the time. And that's like primarily 99% where I get a lot of my inspiration from, is just like listening and getting inspired by music. And, you know, I walk around the house always with my AirPods or something in, where I'm listening to some new track, just trying to be like, yeah, that's awesome. Or if I'm washing the dishes or doing something in the yard, I'm always like just, you know, fishing and hunting for cool, inspirational new music. And that always keeps me inspired, listening to other artists do cool stuff. And yeah, I would say those are like the two or three main sources of inspiration for me. And also I get a lot of inspiration from visual art too. I was a graphic designer major in college, and for a lot of people that may not know that, I was going to pursue a job in the design industry, working as a graphic designer, because I was a visual artist first, and music was always just kind of like my side hobby, passion. And I never really thought that I'd be able to make a living through music, although that it was weird that music was going to take precedence over my design idea, being a graphic designer way early on, because it started to take over my life a long time ago. But yeah, it was yeah, you just never know which way things will go, you know. So yeah, that's how things went. And here I am today, thinking that I was going to be a graphic designer, and now I'm working full time as doing audio. So
thank you for shifting toward the music, Richard.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I'm happy too. I think I'm much happy. I don't know how happy I would have been working on in a design job at some company, just doing graphic design stuff. I mean, I love doing that stuff too, but I still had the real passion for music, was really where I was the most happy with doing, you know. And I was doing music even back then, and wasn't making any money. I didn't care. I wasn't doing it because I wanted to make money or be famous. I just did it because it was like a form of very therapeutic medicine for me. It was just like painting, or, you know, going kayaking, or doing something that's really relaxing, that gives something back to you. And that's what music was for me. Just writing and creating things was just very therapeutic for me. And you know, and it still is to this day. That's why I love doing it and continue to do it even to this day. So yeah, and I think, yeah, the passion is there and you love doing it, then it doesn't really feel like a job. I think I tell a lot of people that, you know, if you do what you love, then, and you get paid to do what you're doing, then, and you feel bad, like I feel bad getting paid a lot of times, like, God, I would have done this for free. This is so fun. Are you kidding? You know, you're doing the right thing. You know, you found your passion, the thing that you love to do. So that's really cool.
Yeah, this I guess must be really nice feelings, I guess. Yeah. And I wanted to ask another question, Richard. This is about a bit more technical. It's about your live system.
Yes.
So I had a chance to see a couple of different setup, and I saw recently you shrink it from like 2 case to a single 1 case, I think, plus 1 skiff. Is that right?
That's right. That's correct. Yeah.
I saw you're comparing to the typical, let's say, modular synthesizer that maybe is focused on like East Coast or West Coast kind of synthesis. You're more focused on sample-based synthesize.
That's right. I shifted. Yeah.
Yeah. So
yes.
My question is like, how different is to work with like one system focused on samples compared to have a more regular kind of synthesizers?
Sure. Yeah. I made that decision to move to a smaller system like last year, just because it was killing my body to carry around my 12U or
I
you remember that
real
case?
PC.
Yeah, you remember how heavy it was. And not that it was bad. It was I was still able to do some really great stuff with that, and I was still improving, switching out modules in that system constantly, trying to find better ways of doing things. And then at some point, when I was playing all these shows and festivals, I was realizing that a lot of the people didn't care if I was using real oscillators or real, complex oscillators or whatever it was. People just wanted to experience it, have a really good experience. And I was thinking, well, why am I killing myself by trying to bring all this extra gear out when really it's not about me trying to show off like this big modular rig on stage. Like really what I should be focusing on, most important aspect is musically what the people are hearing and trying to give them the best, most interesting sonic experience possible. And so I kind of rethought my setup. I was like, well, how could I do that? How could I scale things down smaller, but still have lots of flexibility and complexity? But and the other thing that I was having a problem with was being able to change to a whole new set of sounds very quickly. Now, when I was using my older system, I was spending a lot of time in my headphones, like repitching things, resetting up oscillators before I bring the next part in, which I'm sure when you're performing, you're always thinking, like, okay, I have this part that's going to come in next. I have to get all that prepared, make sure everything's in tune, make sure everything's all sounding perfectly. So spending a lot of time when should have been performing, I was spending more time making sure everything was working and setting up stuff for the next part that was going to play. And I was like, I need to cut that part down to where I'm focusing more on the performance and performing the music and performing the stuff in real time rather than trying to prepare everything that was happening before. So I was like, well, how could I do that but still have the ability to use CV and gate, control voltages and have all this other crazy stuff happening? So I was like, well, I could just sample all of my material that I create here on my bigger systems, sample all those pieces down, and then edit everything up and then trigger all that in. Now I have 2 bitboxes, V2 bitbox 1010s, and then the ER301 are probably like the main meat of the show now. And then I'm using a bunch of crazy, one of the STS samplers as well from 4MS, and they're all filled with stuff. Like my STS has like, I don't know, probably like 32 gigabytes of tens of thousands of samples that I've cut up and used, thousands of percussion hits, granular things, and my ER301's maxed out as well with all kinds of crazy stuff I've made. And it was a different way of thinking about things, but I had to think, well, I can still make this sound organic. It doesn't have to sound like samples. Like I have things where you never hear the same thing twice. Like I might have like a 1 8-minute long sample I've cut up I've added all the slice markers in, and it's just playing through each piece slowly as it's changing over time or being transformed. So it's not like you're hearing a static thing. Everything's changing and running through effects. I have a couple of Eurorack. I've got a skiff with Paul's 520 Hyperion effects processor, the Panharmonium resynthesizer, and a bunch of other I'm looking here on my floor. Here's some DSP based modules for effects processing. I just got the data bender from Qubit just the other day, which is cool. But yeah, so I use a lot of stuff that's basically a combination of crazy effects processing, mangling with sample manipulation, and that's basically where I've shifted my live setup recently, because I've wanted more flexibility. I wanted to be able to play a wider variety of sounds, and I wanted to be able to do faster changes between songs so I could play more songs in a shorter amount of time. So the end result would be a more interesting live show, but not having to bring out a huge setup, So I rethought things and tried to, like I said before, just scale down, and now I've got it pretty good. I feel like it's a really good it's a really good setup, and the modules like have gotten better. You know, now there's better, higher sampling rates, 2496. Things don't sound as crappy as they used to. When it comes to Eurorack samplers, you can still, and I use the SSL mixer live, the SSL 6. So when I play live, everything sounds really, I get really high headroom. Everything's still impactful, super big detail, like really big sound. I still try to make sure everything sounds aesthetically really present and in your face as much as possible. So yeah, that was the move. That was basically the main reasons why I shifted down to a smaller setup, was that I just had to rethink the way I was doing things. I felt like people really didn't care what I was using for a lot of the shows, unless I was playing like a modular specific event, which 80% of the time I wasn't. A lot of the, like almost 80 to 90% of all the shows I played last year were just all festival gigs where, you know, maybe there were
music.
they were there for the music. Yeah, there may have been like one or two like modular nerdy fans that came to the show, but like in the overall crowd, the full spectrum of things, there was a very small percentage of modular heads that were really there. More people, there that were just on drugs, wanting to get their brains blown away at the party. So, so yeah, I shifted my focus. So, yeah, because at the end of the day, the most important thing should be is what people hear, no matter how you get to that result, whether you use a big Buchla system or an Electron Digitone or whatever that piece of gear is, how big or small it is, it shouldn't really matter. It's whatever you make with that stuff that people can experience. I think that's the most important thing. So that really was kind of made me change my focus.
Yeah, absolutely. And just like, I'm curious, how different is to compose a song with sample compared to a song with synthesizers?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, my guess is that like you tend to sample certain kind of sound, find some kind of coherence and put them together to create a song, something like that maybe?
Yeah, it's I have to think about the song structure differently, but with the samplers, you can do things now in sections. You can change things drastically, so you're not stuck having to like make all the stuff happen for the next part. You can instantly flip or gradually change things. And a lot of that is tricks I've learned with the samplers, like using the ER301 or the bit boxes, like say I take a bass line, for instance, that I have single hits happening, right? So each bass line, it starts out and it changes. Each one's different, like different filters. And then over time, maybe it opens up and then it turns into something completely crazy, right? So if I play those bass lines in the track, you're hearing them, but they're always different. It could be a 5-minute long file that I've recorded here, me sequencing that bass line and recording it, but it's getting, and then maybe there's some processing and stuff happening on top of that. So you're only going to hear that one sample play in the part only one time in the track. As each marker transient hits, I'm moving through the track, and each part that I've created is separated in its own sort of like stem in a way, but it's all split up with splice markers, and I can either travel through them progressively through time, and then you hear all those parts changing at the same time. I sometimes will have them, there's parts where I have like little or like DSP things, stuff that I've created, or weird like glitchy effects things, where I set up markers where it'll play at random positions throughout like a 5-6 minute piece. So you never hear the same thing hitting twice. And then I may have that getting granularly reorganized or scrambled. So there's lots of creative ways of creating organic complexity with samples. And it also is a lot of ear fine tuning too, because like I try to make it not sound like it's sampled at all, because it's all synthesis. It's all synthesis that I've sampled. So I'm using everything that I've synthesized with my modular here. So it has this sound quality already that sounds really organic and kind of in a, you know, weird place to begin with. So that to me has been like a really interesting combination. It was not really much different than how I was doing stuff with computers back in the day, but now I have the added flexibility of using Eurorack sequencers and Eurorack modulation devices that can do lots of wilder automation than in the computer, because in the computer you're doing stuff with like, you know, automation draws of like a mouse or within an editor. With Eurorack stuff, you can have like 200 things going all over the place. This stuff can get really interesting very quickly. And then automating effects after that. I have the REM, the Northern Lights module that's also in my new library now, that allows me to control 2 of the H9 FX processors, but I can CV control all of the parameter values in real time for both of those. So on the Cystic record, I did that. So all the reverbs are all like pulling out and getting all mangled, and delays are getting all crazy because it's all being controlled by the Eurorack. So that's really, really fun. Yeah, so there's all kinds of cool things that it's basically a lot of the same stuff I was doing when I was synthesizing. I'm just not having to be like, okay, here's my kick drum, here's my module for my snares, here's my module that I use for my hi-hats. Like, I was wasting like a 6U case just to do drums, you know? And I was just like, this is crazy. Like, you know, do people care that I'm like, I mean, I've proven that I can do everything with like, I can build a whole song just with synthesis, right? I've done that for years. People know that I can do that. But why am I killing myself trying to play these shows, trying to prove that same idea over and over again when everybody knows that I'm able to do that? And I think, and that's not really the point of playing these shows. It's not to prove that, hey, I can do all these things with synthesis. You guys already know that. And I think people forget the fact that we're going out to hear a concert. We're going out there to hear like the music. Like, here's something musically moving and interesting and provocative that like makes you go, whoa, that was cool. That's really the point of it all for me. So I felt that I kind of needed to get back to that point where like I need to deliver a really interesting live performance and try to scale down and be smarter about how I do things. Not work harder, but work smarter. Exactly. So it's kind of that's kind of the reasons why the change took place. But and I'm still, like I said, I'm still switching things out, trying new things. I'm experimenting with the This Is Not Rocket Science procedural sequencer, Tuesday sequencer, for doing melodies and stuff. Because now I have one bit box that's just doing like melodies and stuff, where I've like created, you know, hundreds and hundreds of different kits of all these different like FM based synths that I've cut up and made. I mean, these are all synthesis patches that I've created from the ground up. So I've made like plucks and weird stuff, but then I'm looking for interesting ways, like different ways to sequence it, and that's been a really cool sequencer lately for generating really cool regenerative style patterns for melodies and stuff like that are interesting Euclidean based styles. So that's been really cool. I've been getting in some interesting stuff there. But I'm hoping that maybe like late next year, I actually would like to try live coding with modular. That's my goal, is because live coding is so interesting. As weird as that sounds, live coding is really the wild, wild west as well. It's another way where you could do things that are really, really crazy with live coding, and it's like instantaneous craziness. I've from my recent experiments with tidal cycles, there's been points where I was like, I thought I was breaking my computer. I was like, oh, whoa, I shouldn't be doing this. And I was like, whoa, that's really cool. I didn't realize that you could get into situations like that so quickly. So I'm really, really really fascinated now to merge the two worlds, the organic control voltage, crazy insanityness with the crazy open-ended anything goes environment of tidal cycles, patterning, and complex rhythms and nested rhythms. So I'm excited, like the possibility of combining these two worlds that I don't think were meant to go together, but why not? Let's see what happens, you know?
Yeah. I mean, the possibility are endless, I guess.
Yeah. I'm always looking for a different way to sequence things,
Yeah.
especially with Eurorack. So, you know, I think I have almost every sequencer that's out on the market, and you know, I use them all, or you know, in sets of 2 or 3. I have, you know, multiple winter modular eloquencers and multiple Renees and multiple circadian rhythms, and yeah, most recently got the Erica Sense drum sequencing module. I have a bunch of other. I mean, I think I have just about every single one I can think of. But yeah, I have, you know, multiple pairs of them. So it's just like looking for new ways of doing things, and trying something different. I want to keep pushing myself to try different things and not get locked into old habits and just keep redoing the same old stuff, if that makes sense. So, because that's easy to do. I've been guilty of that many times, of using the same stuff, and I'm trying to get out of my old bad habits.
Comfort zone, yeah.
Switch it up.
Yeah. And talking about strictly module, Richard, which are the type of modules you can live without?
Oh man, that's a tough
Like, I guess,
one.
like, probably, I mean, we talked before about samples, so I guess like sampler play main roles in your actual setup, I guess.
Yeah, I would say the ER301 has been my main, like, I've got so many custom units I've designed for that. I put a lot of time into that module because it can do so many things.
Yeah.
As you know, yeah, I mean, you could do so many crazy things with it, and that plays such a huge part in my live show. I would say it's probably one of the most important modules in my setup. Like, I'm probably going to get another one at some point and run 2 in my case, just so I could delegate and have more complexity and stuff going on. I mean, you could already do so much with just one, but yeah, I would say it's one of the most important ones. Besides that, I think my other favorite would be, I would say right now, is like the Bitbox and the, I'm trying to think, I have so many. It's such a hard, it's such a hard thing. I mean, it's if you ask me, like, I mean, I have so many new oscillators that have come out that have been really cool. It's hard to decide on any one thing. But yeah, I mean, if we're talking just strictly like live utility-based things, I'd say the ER301 is still my favorite module, because you can just create your own customized unit patches and containers that really, really worked exactly the way you want. You can completely change the inputs and the way that, you know, you're dealing with like gate and CV signals within each patch. So it's really, really I love how customizable that is. And especially when you're doing samples and processing with DSP processing, I haven't found a really better module that handles all that in one elegant, all-in-one interface. So yeah, I would say for me, that's probably my favorite. I'm trying to think of some of the other favorites. I'd say the most other recent favorite module I got, although it's huge, is Paul Schreiber's E520 Hyperion processor, effects processor. That's got some great spectral processing algorithms, and he really did a fantastic job on that module. I really got to say that it's one of my favorite new effects modules that's come out in a long time, as far as really radically different stuff. And Paul really tried to do some different stuff than what's already out there. He was like, hey, you know what, everyone's already done these things. I really want to focus on stuff that hasn't been done. So if you guys want to give me feedback, I remember on the Synthesis Tech Facebook page, he was asking everybody, what affects you guys? And I remember messaging Paul privately. I was like, man, I would love more spectral processing. There's spectral FFT based, time domain spectral, spectral smearing, that kind of stuff, and blurring of frequencies. And he's like, yeah, all right. These are all great things. I'll put them in my notes. And, you know, months and months later, Paul got back to me, I had the first prototype. I think I had the first prototype that was out in the wild. I posted one of the first videos when he had sent me some of the first algorithms, and I was just blown away. I was like, this is exactly what I was looking for. You know, we don't need another delay module. We don't need a multi-filter module or another this or another that, you know. And Paul really tried to do some stuff that we haven't heard yet. So I was really excited when now I have the final production model, and it's beyond my expectations of it. Blew me away. It's still blowing me away. And it's stereo as well too. So it's yeah, he just did a fantastic job on that module. Really great job.
Yeah, hope I have the chance someday to play with it.
Yeah. It's really cool. It's really cool. Yeah.
So like, for example, if you could invent like your very signature module, what it would be, Richard?
Oh man. Oh god, that'd be tough. I think it'd be a drum module of some sort. Like, you know what, my dream would be to have something like the Nord Drum 2. I think I see yours there. Yeah, like I love the Nord Drum 2. Yeah, that's such a great box where you could do like additive subtractive synthesis, physical modeling, like a noise generator, like complex noise generator. We could do different types of metal, or just like timbres of noise. But like something that incorporates lots of different synthesis methods, additive, like I said, additive subtractive, physical modeling, FM synthesis, like you can do FM based synthesis also in the Nord Drum. Like I love all having that packed into that little box machine. Yeah, but if I had that and like even a smaller footprint Eurorack module where I could trigger up to 8 voices or 6 different instrument drum voices, that would be incredible. And then be able to recall and store those settings. And then maybe you have like 6 or 8 knobs, or I don't know how many knobs for all of the performance controls, like, you know, your tact decay, filter, like settings for each patch, something that you might want to tweak or adjust as you're playing live or in a patch. I still haven't seen someone make an all-in-one drum module that can really be like the sound designer's paradise for creating your own customized drum percussion sounds. Like there's been like smaller things, like smaller ideas where you might have like plates,
maybe
for instance.
More focused on like certain kind of synthesis, but not something so complete, right? Like we have Plonk, right, from IntelliGel, which does the chromophone, like applied acoustics, physical modeling type of sound, which is great. I'd love to have that element also with other elements in one module, so that you have multiple choices of different ways that you could go about creating your different drum sounds, and you have like a wider palette to begin with, and then you could store or maybe do combinations, like one voice could be FM, one voice could be physical modeling for your snares, and then another voice could be something else to create your other percussion sounds. But that to me would be an ultimate dream to have, and I'm still would love to have that if someone wants to make that. That would be my ultimate. And effects, maybe some built-in effects in there as well, although it wouldn't be totally mandatory, but it'd be really fun if it did. But I mean, just having that, just a full synthesis, like just a full synthesis little workstation module that where you could really just customize and design your own synthesized drum sounds, like a drum synthesizer, like a full-fledged drum synthesizer module would be my dream. And but hey, you know, that might be a huge undertaking. It's probably a very complex and hard thing to do, so I say that, but that would be a dream come true. Yeah, let's see, maybe somebody's going to make your dream come true, hopefully.
I hope one day. I'm hoping.
And one very last question, Richard, which is your advice for people who want to start the journey into the Eurorack world?
Wow. Yeah, I would say start simple. I know it can be overwhelming. When I started out in modular synthesis, there was no Eurorack stuff back in the early 90s. When I first bought my ARP 2600, I bought a complete system, which taught me all the basic fundamentals of synthesis. So that was a great way to get in. And I tell a lot of people, you know, if you really want to get a grasp on things, like maybe look at getting like a make noise shared system or a complete system that is already pre-configured for you. It's a lot. I think a lot of people are scared when they get into URX that they have a really hard time deciding what goes in their case. They're like, well, I don't even know what I want to do. Do I want to make this thing or that thing? But if you don't have much experience with synthesis, I think it's a better idea to buy a complete system that's already has the key components. You've got your oscillators, your VCAs, your VCF, your envelope generators, your mixers. Maybe you have an effects or reverb or something, and then you have other control voltage sources built into the system like LFO, sample and hold, lag processor, or inverter, whatever those little utility-based things are, a multiplier, you know, just the basic things that helps you get a basic understanding of what a modular synthesizer can do, right? So you can get a basic understanding of first, like, oh, what does this oscillator do? Oh, I can pitch the oscillator up and down. I can cross modulate it into another oscillator and stuff like that. So I tell people the best way to do that is to get a system that has all that put together. Then it makes more sense how all the other parts are supposed to play together with that module or that sound source or that VCO. It's like, oh, if I run the VCO into the filter, it does this. And then if I run the filter into the VCA, it does from the oscillator to the VCA, it does this, you know? It just teaches you these things that you may not learn if you buy all these random things and try to figure things out in a different order. I think for me, at least, that's how it worked. I bought a complete system first and I learned the basics. And that really, really helped me because then I had that knowledge as my foundation, and I was able to build from that point, from that platform, realizing I was like, oh, I know how to make that sound with a ring modulator and this and that or whatever, envelope follower. Like I'd say, the R2600 was such a great, I keep going back to it, but that was my first modular synth I bought. It's such a great educational tool, and yeah, actually a lot of universities and schools bought ARP2600s to teach synthesis in their in their music labs, and I can easily understand why, because you could use it without patch cables, just using the faders, or you could use the 66 patch points that are on it and patch your own stuff from the ground up. So it's an extremely well thought out interface. Alan Alberman did a really good job on that particular synth. I feel it's why it's so iconic and was used on so many records, and I still have mine here even today, and it's I owe so much to that synth. I don't think I'd be nowhere near where I am today had I not had all those tens of thousands of hours of playing with it back when I was 17 years old in my parents' garage. It's that would be my approach, is to get an all-in-one system and try that first and learn the basics before you spread out and buy a case of other stuff, because that can be creating more confusion and trying to figure out what you need to build, especially if you haven't used a synth. I mean, if you have used a synthesizer, maybe you have different needs. Maybe you want to use Eurorack for a different purpose. Maybe you want to build an all effects rack where you can control it with crazy modulation sources, or maybe you want to build an ambient generator Eurorack module, or do something where you just want to have different style of drums. Like everyone, that's the cool thing about Eurorack stuff, is you could go into it and make whatever you want. It's basically you design the instrument to your needs. Exactly. So, but if you're asking somebody who's just jumping into it and just wanting to learn about stuff, I think the better route to go is to get a complete system. I think they'll just to get a better understanding of what's going on. I think that's the best route to go. It'll create,
find your own way, actually. Yeah.
Find your own way, yeah. Then maybe like you get the shared system, and then it's like, you know what? I understand all this. Maybe I'll sell out some modules, try out some different oscillators, try out some different filters. It's like it's super cool that you can do. Oh, sorry, we're getting all these political calls from because of all the election coming up, in our country. I really think that's the best way to approach it. if it were me, is to do that. It's make sure you get the basic understanding first, and then build from that point. Figure out where you want to go after that. You know, whether you want, you have to ask the question of like, what do I want this instrument to do in my music? What role do I want it to play? Do I want it to be the main instrument that I create music with, or does it only going to play a small part and within a bigger picture of other instruments in my track? So I think the person has to ask that question, you know, am I going to solely be making all of my tracks on a modular synthesizer? And if that is going to be the case, then I'm going to figure out what kind of music and things and requirements that the modules are going to have, you know, to have to give to me when I'm making the music. So lots of questions, I guess. But if you're starting out, yeah, I would go with just a all-in-one system, if it were me.
Okay. Also because it's very easy to get lost in the rabbit hole with this, you know, massive choice of modules and brands we have nowadays. So
there's so many choices. It's hard to decide, you know, and with a lot, as you know, with a lot of this stuff, you really don't know how well you're going to jive with it until you get your hands and start patching with it, you know. And I've gotten a lot of modules where I was just like, oh, I don't like this, how this is set up, you know. And sometimes it took me months to get used to it. And then eventually, if I liked it or not liked it, sometimes I was like, all right, I don't jive with this one. I'm going to take it out, switch it out for something else. And, you know, it could be this constant changing of things until you find something that you like or that you want to work with. With me, I don't even screw in my modules anymore. I'm switching stuff out all the time. I just kind of put them in. And when I have called... Yeah, I call them floater cases on my floor. So I have all these cases of stuff that I don't even screw the stuff in because I'm always just trying new things out all the time and switching things up. And, you know, I have, my big cases are that are the permanent modules are screwed into, but a lot of the stuff I just swap out. So it's a lot of just stuff that's just hanging around. But yeah, it's, I would say, go that route. And now there's lots of different systems. There's a lot of different Eurorack, Pittsburgh, Modular. There's a lot of companies now that make these all-in-one systems that you could just buy. Yeah, we could just get it, just check it out and see if it's for you. I have friends that tried out Modular and it wasn't for them at all. I had two of my friends that I brought over here that I totally thought would get into it. They came over here and played with it and they were like, man, I can't do this. This isn't me. I need a timeline. I make music on a timeline in Ableton. This is too weird for me. You know, like they couldn't get their head wrapped around ideas like, you know, the sequencer's always running and then you got to do all this other stuff. And like, it's a different, as you know, it's a different way of making music. It's a total different process. So some people get it, some people don't. It's a great way for them to figure out if it's the way they want to do things or if they feel they're going to make something really cool with it. So I would say get an all-in-one system, and if you like it, then figure out, it'll give you a good indication of where you should go next from there.
Yeah. Okay, Richard, thank you so much for this nice chat and for all of this precious suggestion you gave us. And we hope to have you with us next year to TFoM 2021, hopefully. Again, thank you so much.
No problem.
Okay. Take care, Richard. Bye-bye. Thank you.